All right, welcome, Michelle.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad that you can be here with us. I've been admiring your work from afar, and we'll be diving into that, I know, today in our conversation. But to start us out, we always begin with a personal check-in. So I'd love for you to let us know where you're joining us from today and also how you're doing at the levels of body, heart, and mind.
Thank you. So I'm joining you from Eugene, Oregon, and it's a grateful day to have some rain finally after many months of very drought summers. So that's where I'm joining you from, and on the levels of mind, body, and heart, you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll start with the body. I'm coming off of having a sinus infection, so my body's still recovering and feeling a little low energy, but much stronger in the last day or two. And checking in with my heart. Yeah, it feels really happy and joyous and connected. I did a one of my morning meditations earlier today, and my parts are feeling really connected, and that leaves more space in my being, so to speak. So that's feeling good. And then what was the other one? Mind. Just feeling some calm and also kind of a little bit in the background, some like creative wheels spinning of different things I need to get done and want to get done. So that's kind of churning on a low level in the background, but in the foreground, it's pretty calm and eager to connect here with you today and our listeners.
Mm. So, Michelle, I know you through the Internal Family Systems community, IFS, and and some of my audience is familiar with IFS because I speak about it here quite a bit, and it's a significant part of the work that I share now. But I also love hearing how others define or introduce IFS. So I'd love for you to just share what is IFS for those who are listening who are not familiar with it yet.
Mm, yeah, I've been doing a lot of IFS intro workshops recently. So there's the introducing the model, and there's also just talking about what it is. So I think I want to go with kind of what it is for me. What it, yeah, for me, IFS is a really gentle way of really getting to know yourselves deeply. It's a really gentle tool to kind of peel back layers and know who we are at our core and what kind of motivates us. It's also a very deeply transformative and healing modality. Um, and I know that that's the way IFS began as a healing therapeutic tool, but it's also really evolved more into being a way of life, a way of being when you're connecting and noticing your parts. And I would say over time, residing more and more in yourself. But it can also be a spiritual tool to help us with our awakening process, if you will, for those of us that are of the spiritual mind. I know some are not, which I want to make clear too that IFS does not mean you have to be a spiritual person, because I know some people are agnostic or atheist, and that's okay too within the IFS framework. But for me, it's very much a spiritual tool as well. So that's kind of the way I frame IFS, as like what it is in general. But then, of course, there's kind of didactic pieces, which I don't know that we need to get into unless you want to, but around self and parts. But yeah.
That's a good just overview, and I appreciate those two distinctions of just the broader thing of how IFS helps us to really peel away the layers of who we are, and so what a potent healing tool it is.
Yeah.
And I know it's been that for you. I mean, it's been both of those things for you. And you've had, from what I've read in your book, you've had quite a journey with IFS, first as a client and now as a certified IFS practitioner. So, Michelle, can you take us back to what was happening in your life when you first started with IFS? Like, how did you discover it? And what were those early months and years like for you?
Good questions. Yeah, when I first learned about IFS, I had been seeing my counselor at the time already for 3 years. I was in Hakomi therapy, and I had sought her out because I was having a lot of flashbacks, intrusive flashbacks, and PTSD symptoms. And my system was really fearful for many years of diving into therapy because I thought I'd be labeled crazy, just because of the way what I know now is the way my system was operating or presenting. I had very little access to self, and so it just felt pretty chaotic inside. So I opted to choose somebody who couldn't put a label on me. And in working with her, the Hakomi was helpful in ways. It kind of gave some tools, I guess, for how to work with when the flashbacks happened. But it wasn't like the thing that was really working. And one day she did IFS with me, and I remember that day distinctly. And at the end of the session, I just said, I need to know what you did today because it was so different. And I can tell that that's what I need. And she had just come back from an IFS training or workshop. And I went home immediately to learn all I could about it. And then ended up going down to Esalen to be with Dick at a workshop for the first time. And what was different about that particular session that my counselor did with me was really helping more with the unblending process. Like she had mentioned over the years, you're not this, part of you that you think you are, that's whatever might be presenting at the particular day. There's something much deeper inside of you that can really hold and be with all this. And I was like, parts of me wasn't jiving with it. I was like, no, that sounds like Sybil. I'm crazy if I believe in that. But it was just a gentle way of really being with my system, that my parts softened back enough that I could actually feel that. And
that was true, that you were more than, yes.
Yeah. Because being highly blended in a part that's like, oh my God, if I have parts, I'm crazy. There was no room for touching into myself. I'd have to go back and look at some of my journal entries about that particular day, but something about, I think probably now knowing IFS because I'm a practitioner, probably really did some direct access with that part so it would soften back. But once there was that space, I was like, oh yeah, there is something here. Like, yeah, I'm beginning to feel myself. So it was just a big pivotal piece. And so I went to Esalen. One of the PAs down there did a 2.5-hour session with me and unburdened my first part. And I came home from that workshop and I told my counselor, I want to do twice a week. I want 90 minutes each. And I just really wanted to do the work and really get to know each of these parts and help them unburden. And so that's kind of the beginning pieces of all that and how I found IFS. Yeah.
I acknowledge your dedication to first just noticing the shift in your system and then going after it so consistently, because that is what it takes, is that consistency, that commitment to show up for our parts, to learn about them, and just to gain more and more access to the deeper layers of our system and ourself.
Yeah. And just to speak for how hard that is when we're highly blended and when parts don't want to unblend, it's almost like a catch-22 in those times of like the parts grasping and holding on and not giving space. And then once there's enough space to go, oh, there's something much stronger and deeper here that can hold all of this. So yeah.
And what did that feel like for you when you started to gain access to that self energy and started to realize there's something more here than just these parts that I'm identified with?
Initially it was still touch and go, I have to
Yeah.
say. Parts of me would still think I might be crazy, or people would think I was crazy. But just the more time I had in getting to know individual parts in session and to unburden them, sometimes I use this analogy of like a window with a really tight screen, the screens, that are on the windows. And not much can pass through that except for air, right? And when I was highly blended and highly burdened, not much could go through there. But as I unblended and unburdened more and more, those little tiny squares got bigger and bigger and bigger until finally, as my system unburdened, mostly, there's a lot of space in there that things could pass through. And so I guess I use that metaphor as just like this felt sense of space opening up inside, or lightness also being able to come through the system or the window, so to speak. It just felt lighter and lighter and lighter with each unburdening. Yeah.
I think this would be a good time just to define a few of the terms like parts, self, unburdening, just as simply as possible.
Yeah. Okay. Well, self is that deep place inside of us that's undamaged and can never be damaged, because I'm a spiritual person. To me, that can also be likened to like a spark of the divine, one kind of drop of God inside of all of this. So this place inside that can really hold pretty much everything. There's like nothing too much for self. Our parts, on the other end, kind of make up our personality and hold all of our stories and experiences of our lives. So they're the parts that hold either our trauma, those would be the exiles, the parts that hold the pain of our experiences, or our protective system parts, managers and firefighters. Those are protectors who do their best to try to make sure that pain either doesn't come through, or when it does, to help soothe it in some ways. So I think just on the very simple level is exiles holding the pain and protectors helping to soothe or prevent pain. But then unblending, one of my favorite metaphors is the sun and the clouds. So self being the sun, it's always present, it's always out there in the universe, and so is self. And our parts could be likened to clouds or the weather that come and overlay the sun sometimes. And it can come in all kinds of forms, really small, thin clouds to very thick, heavy thunderstorms. And those, when they blend in, obscure the sun. And when we unblend, those parts move away from the sun and the sun is shining. And it falls along a continuum, so we're not always just perfectly in self or all the ways fully blended in parts. It goes back and forth across a spectrum. Hope that's going to be helpful for listeners who might be new. It's kind of a whirlwind there.
Yes. But it is, when we spell it out, it is simple, and it is things that we understand. And like you said, like being a person in the spiritual path, there's things that cross over into IFS. And but speaking of spirituality and spiritual path, what is your spiritual orientation?
I want to start with saying at the beginning of my IFS journey and beginning of my therapy to begin with, I was very much an atheist and agnostic person. I had parts that really were angry, I think, about my circumstances in life, and so didn't believe in God or the possibility of that. But as I went through my IFS unburdenings, I just became much more spiritual along the way. I'm pretty eclectic spiritually. I do like Buddhism a lot. I like pretty much many religions, so to speak. I'm not a religious person, but I find a lot of the tenets in most religions to be true or hold some meaning to me. So I'm pretty eclectic spiritually. And for me, the whole process of unburdening and unblending with my parts just opened that space for it to naturally emerge, if you will, as parts unburdened. And yeah.
And so you sharing the beginning of your IFS journey, how long has it been from there to where you are now?
It's 18 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
significant.
It is. I'm trying to write my healing memoir, and that's been on and off the burner for 10 years. And I know my official date of IFS entry, so to speak. And yeah, so it's 18 years, and it's been a beautiful process.
And what stage are you at in writing your healing memoir?
It's still very much at the beginning. In 2020, I had curtailed many clients so that I could just dedicate more time for that. But then with the pandemic and everything with that, it was a little challenging to do. And only recently have I begun to get right back into the writing. So it's pretty much at the beginning. I know, excuse my voice with my coming off of my sinus infection. I've got my scaffolding. I have over 4,000 pages of journal entries to go back to for. I have a part who likes to have exact pieces in there, so this part of me wants some exact representation. So, yeah.
And you have a first book out, Daily Parts Meditation. And just from reading that book, I understand it came out of your own desire to stay connected with your parts in between your one-on-one sessions. And actually, that's one of the questions that I get the most from my own clients within one-on-ones and groups is, what do I do between now and the next time that we meet? Like, what do I do with these parts now that we met them or unburden them? Can you speak to why it's important to cultivate these relationships with our parts in between sessions?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was definitely a mutual desire on my parts and myself's desire for that connection. And to be honest, there was one part of me specifically who said, if we're going to stop therapy again, we need you to stay in contact. So that's how it began. But as far as why it's important, what I've noticed for myself and what I'm seeing now with clients is, first, it really helps to build that the trust of the parts in self when we're showing up daily with them. And of course, that fosters that self-to-part relationship, connecting with them, helping them to remember that they're not going to be forgotten again. They once were forgotten, or maybe several times have been forgotten. And when I say that, it's more of knowing that there are other parts who have prevented connection, at least for me. Well, and some of my clients, I know that too. There might be parts that say, we don't have time to connect with parts today. So it's not so much self has forgotten them, but they feel forgotten. And having a regular connection with our parts also helps them with unblending, right? So they get to unblend as a result, they identify less as self, because some parts think that they're self. And so when we're in connection with our parts regularly, they begin to identify less as self. They're seeing themselves differently than the core self. And it's also just a really good practice of embodiment as we really take up more space. We, being ourself, takes up more space in our physical being. We're really embodying. We feel much more embodied, is what I'll say. We have much more space in our bodies for that, and that essentially kind of feeds back to the beginning of, parts trusting self to lead. So it's almost like a feedback loop where the parts build trust, and then they disidentify as self. They trust self to lead. We're more embodied, and it's just for me, it's been a very good feedback loop. What's the word? Reinforcing.
Reinforcing.
Yeah.
And how was the process of writing and creating this first book for you?
Well, honestly, I had not ever intended to write that book. It began when I was preparing to go back to Esalen again, which I had done many times, and my therapist it's really highly suggested that I show Dick my parts pendants, which you'll see on the back of my wall there, and that are in the book, and show him my parts map and all of that, because she thought he would really appreciate it. And I had parts that are like, no, I'm not going to bother Dick, he's busy. But I did, and he immediately said, come sit down and tell me all about this. And I shared with him what the parts map was, and the parts catalog cards, and the parts externalizations. And he said, I want you to present this at the conference. And that really scared a lot of parts at that particular moment, because I had not done public speaking for probably at that point 20 years, since college. But because Dick found something useful in it, I thought, well, I might as well do this. So I went home and just began kind of writing what I thought would be like a 30-page little manual that I could give to participants at the workshop. And as I began writing, it was very clear. It was like, this is more than 30 pages. This is a book. And I think at that time it was 5 or 6 months between when I was accepted for the conference and the conference happening. I knew I couldn't get a publisher in time, so I had to go the self-publish route. And looked into all of that and decided, okay, that's what I'll do. But it was a process. At the time, I was working, I think, 4 days a week with probably 16 or 18 clients a week. And on the weekends and on off hours was writing. So it was like 80, 90-hour weeks to get that book done. Yeah.
Wow. And you wrote it within that several month window before the conference?
Yeah. In fact, I got my proof, what they call a proof copy. I got that about 3 weeks before the conference, and just in enough time to order the copies to be sent to Rhode Island. So it was like just in the nick of time to get it done. That was the first edition. At the time, Dick was preparing to meet with the Dalai Lama that year, so he couldn't give me my foreword. So I knew I'd be doing a second edition. And so this book that's out now is the second edition, because it has got Dick's foreword and I think 9 lead therapists, or lead trainers, endorsements in it, and wanted to have all of that in it as well. So.
And can you share with us an example of like a daily parts meditation or practice to just get to know our parts, stay connected with our parts, and for those who are doing this work, either one-on-one or with a group, just something that people can try at home?
Yeah. I was anticipating that. So I was thinking about doing this with a kind of a wide range of people who are either new or people who might have parts that are already unburdened. So I'm going to try something a little unique today with that.
Great.
Excuse me. I don't know, is it okay for it to be about a 15-minute meditation?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And you're invited to follow along too.
Great.
Yeah. And I'll probably close my eyes just because it helps me to stay in touch. So what I'm going to first invite people to do even before closing your eyes or softening your gaze is just for new people to this, I'll just invite you to think of a feeling or a thought that you might have been having through this podcast so far. Maybe you're beginning to notice what a part might be. So maybe just notice one of those feelings or thoughts. And for those who are familiar with IFS, maybe choose a part of yourself who you know. And if perchance you have a part that's already been unburdened and you haven't been in contact with them for a while, I would encourage you to select that part or one of those parts. So I'm just going to give people just a moment to kind of select a part or a feeling or a thought. And when you have that, just let that part know that you'll be with them in a minute, but just they can stay nearby for a moment. And I'll just now begin to invite you to close your eyes or soften your gaze. And for those that breath is useful, you can take a few slow breaths in and out. And I'd like you just to invite all of your parts, known and unknown, to gather around you. And for those that are new to IFS or this concept, just inviting all of your thoughts or feelings to be around you. And just taking a moment to notice who's showing up or what's showing up. And as you notice them there, some might be closer into you than others. Maybe you are feeling the feelings or thinking the thoughts. But just begin to gently ask or invite your parts to take a step back, not to go anywhere, but just to be near you, giving you a little bit of space. And sometimes the paradox reminder that the more space they give you, the more you can be with them, helps them to know that. So just letting them know that this more space they can give you, the more you can be with all of them. And you might just see if there are some still lingering, blended a lot, just seeing what they might need to give you a little bit of space. And if they can't that's okay. You can just stay with that part or that feeling of thought. Just get to know that. But if you do feel like you've got some space inside, that your parts have given you some room, and you feel you're in yourself or self energy more, those qualities of calm and connection, curiosity, courage, confidence, if you feel in that space, even to some degrees, just sending out that self energy towards your whole system. Letting them know you're here with them. You might just take a moment just to feel yourself present here in this moment, embodied in yourself, in your self energy. Noticing what it feels like in your body. And if it feels right, you can also just make a connection to the bigger self. Self as a source or God, or however you conceive of that, if that applies to you. And just feeling that connection. And I'm now going to invite you to locate that part that you chose at the beginning. And just invite that part to come be near you. And make some sort of connection with that part of you. For those that are new, that feeling or thought. And just invite them to share with you what they want you to know, feel, sense, or remember. And as this part shares with you, if you're getting what they're sharing with you, just letting them know that you do get it. And if not, just invite them to share more. And if you are getting it, just checking with them to see if they feel like you're getting what they're sharing with you. Do they feel like you're really getting this? And maybe taking one more minute just to invite them to share anything else they want you to get today. And again, if you're getting that, to just let them know that you are really getting them. You're here with them. You feel, see, remember, sense whatever it is that they're sharing. And just letting them know that this isn't their only opportunity to be with you. That if you choose to do your own meditation practice with your parts, that they'll have more opportunities with you, or that you might be able to take this to your therapy with your IFS practitioner or therapist. And for those of you who chose a part that's been unburdened already, just taking a moment to remember the ways that this part showed up for you, the ways its actions or beliefs helped get you through some of your life. And you might also remember a piece of unburdening that they did. Maybe remembering what they gave it up to, one of the elements, the beliefs and burdens they once held that are now gone. And likewise, taking a moment to remember their returned qualities that came in after their unburdenings. And you might thank them for being the unique aspect of you that they are. Thanking them for trusting you. And maybe even letting them know that you love them. And then just gently finding a way to say goodbye to this part for now. Letting it know that they can come and have time with you anytime they need. It's best done when they come to you directly and with space. And then just taking a moment again to feel yourself here embodied in this present moment with all your parts gathered around you. And again, sharing your self energy, connection with your whole system. All of your parts, known and unknown. And you can let each of your parts know that they can have this same experience that this one part had today. If you decide to adopt a practice like this, creating your own unique daily parts meditation practice, to have this connection with you. And then just thanking them for giving you the space for the meditation. And for any parts that were unable to give space today, that's completely fine. Maybe you got to learn something about some of the concerns or what they might have needed. Letting those parts know that they're important and that you can potentially bring their concerns to your therapist or practitioner. And then just gently saying goodbye to the whole system inside. Letting them know that you're always available. And then in your own timing, very slowly, maybe beginning to move your body around a little bit or take some deeper breaths to begin to slowly shift from the internal world out into your room, your space that you're in, into our shared space here with Sarah and I. I'm just taking a moment to arrive.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciated doing that myself. I noticed initially like a strong manager part, just kind of like managing the podcast, and just
Yeah.
having a like not wanting to let go and drop into it. And I just allowed that part to be here and to do what it was doing. And then I just, at some point, it just softened back because then I was fully in it and able to be with one of my parts that was unburdened several months ago. That shortly after that, I moved into a new home and I've got out of the rhythm of connecting with that one. And so it was good just to reconnect with her. And she was really grateful that I did.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm always curious, how was that for her to have kind of some remembrances of her unburdenings? Was that kind of there for her?
It was, yes. And also, I think it was helpful for her and me just to feel how shifted she is now, and how, even though we haven't been in close contact, I feel like we have at a certain level, and just how, and now she's living in my home with me now. That was part of the retrieval of her, and just feeling how comfortable she is. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. That reminds me of when I've moved home over the years through my IFS journeys and my parts that were retrieved to the house that I was in. I was conscious of making sure they moved with me, so to speak.
That's a good point.
Yeah. it's one of those things that, one would probably never think about, but parts can be like, wait, you left me at that other house.
Right.
I want to be here at this new place too.
Hmm. Yeah,
Mm.
it's a really good point. So is this a kind of parts meditation that you do every day or that you recommend doing every day?
Some variation of it, yeah. So the daily parts meditation practice, meditation piece evolved when I was at a point of wanting to, or being ready to leave my second big chunk of therapy. And so I had a bunch of unburdened parts. And so I say that because the DPMP began with connecting with already unburdened parts in the system. And my MP3 of meditations contains many different kinds of meditations. So this was kind of a unique kind of blending of many of those meditations, because I invited people who are new to just get to know a part, just spending some of that time getting to know it. But then for people who've already been through unburdening, to be able to welcome in that celebration piece of remembering the unburdened piece. So it's kind of it's a yes and everything kind of question, like wherever your parts are at on the journey. I think all of my meditations start in this way of kind of inviting everyone to gather around and giving space so that they can witness what's happening with each part and feeling the self energy. And then if it's, we're at the beginning of our process and we're just getting to know parts, then great, let's be with the part maybe we were in therapy with this week and seeing what else they want us to witness and get, if that's possible without other parts jumping in. And then, of course, my system's so much of an advocate for staying in connection post unburdening, because parts we don't get rid of them. They're always there. They're very important, especially when they've unburdened. They've got these great qualities that infuse our life that we have these abilities with. So to stay in contact with them is really helpful.
Mm. And what would you say to someone listening right now who is new to this, new to these concepts, new to this work, or maybe has been considering stepping into it, maybe even as a result of this conversation, but has doubts as to whether or not this can really help them with whatever they're facing or whatever parts they're working with?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first, I would say that's totally welcome. And that's not uncommon, I think, for there to be skeptical or doubting parts of us. And if it feels like that's not a part of me, that I'm just skeptical and doubting, that's welcome too. Maybe you've done many types of therapies before and it hasn't got you to the place where you want to be, or something just didn't work. So you're like, well, why would this be any different? With IFS, we really want to honor our protectors. So I would see the doubt and the skeptical parts as, a protection, which is there for reasons, good reasons. And we just want to get to know that. So just honoring that there's a reason for the skeptic or the doubt, and knowing that IFS is different than any other therapy in that, one, we really honor all parts, but two, that there's this deeper place inside of us that we've been speaking to, this self place inside of us that can really hold everything. And once we are in touch with that, then there's nothing we can't tend to or resolve or heal. So perhaps people haven't been in touch with that yet. Maybe that's scary, or maybe it's doubtful that's in there. Dick's my primary teacher, Dick Schwartz, the founder of IFS, and he's not met anybody he's not been able to help locate their self. So it's within all of us.
And Michelle, I know before we went live, you were talking about a newish app that is available.
Mm-hmm.
that helps us to connect with our parts. Do you want to speak more to that?
Yeah, yeah. The app is called Center. It's spelled Sentur. It's an IFS inspired app that's very integrous to the model. We really hold all the tenets of the model very highly with respect. And they collaborated with me about a year ago to bring my DPMP tools into it. So there's some of my meditations in there. Mapping system will be evolved into my mapping system as well at some point. But so several of my tools are in there, but all of these tools, whether they're mine or other people's within Center, helps us to either unblend from our parts. There's a walkthrough to help you unblend if you're highly blended in the moment. It helps you to catalog your parts. Maybe you're got a new trailhead and you're just beginning to see what parts are involved. You can map them out and really deeply get to know each of the parts that are involved in that, and then stay in contact with them through what I've called the daily, what do I call it? Daily post unburdening maintenance check-in. So once a part has unburdened in therapy, we have that about 30-day process of checking in with the part. So there's a specific one of my meditations in there to begin doing what people got to experience a little bit today in our meditation with. And then once that's complete, they can roll over into a regular DPMP of all your different unburdened parts can get cataloged in there and stay in regular connection with them. And then, we didn't go through the 6 different tools of the DPMP, but one of them is parts externalizations. And you can have images of your parts in there to represent them as well. So it's just chock full of things, and it's getting fuller and fuller with even more great things to help with your IFS process.
It sounds like a great resource.
Yeah. And I'll say you can do a free 30-day trial before committing to the annual membership. But even at the annual membership, I think of $54, that's like less than half of a therapy session to be able to have that for the year. Yeah.
And Michelle, in addition to these daily parts meditation practices that you do, working with your own clients, writing your healing memoir, what are some other things that you do on a daily basis that you feel really sustain you and nourish you?
Yeah, I like that. Well, sleep is a big thing for me. So if I get good sleep, then I'm already set up for my day. I always start my day with my daily parts meditation practice, and that between sleep and the DPMP meditation, which I do on a walk, so I get my exercise in with it, really kind of build the foundation for my day. I also connect every day, twice a day, with my learnings or teachings I've received out of my own psychedelic journeys that I've done. I know how important it is to do integration work with whatever comes from those psychedelic assisted therapy journeys. So I consciously connect in with each day one different piece of whatever I've learned on my journeys. And part of that is also a practice of connecting with I would say the plant spirit. I received a special Pusanga perfume, if you will, that's got all the medicine teachings in it from several ayahuasca journeys down in Peru. And so I was instructed to connect with that every day. So I do that twice a day. I was married 2 years ago, and so connection with my husband, we speak about parts all the time and acknowledge each other's parts is super helpful for both of us. Eating organic vegetarian, lots of water, nature, staying in touch with good family and friends. Those are things that really, they're like the glue, if you will, of my day. And as I'm sitting here saying this, I'm hearing my parts in the background going, and the biggest one is my DPMP. I guess I'm hearing that they want to emphasize how important that is, just that unblending process and trust in myself. So that's really the biggest piece. Yeah.
Yeah, I relate to all of those that you shared. I'm a huge fan of sleep, and yeah, it's the daily process of checking in with parts and unblending when certain parts are just taking over and needing some attention, and also needing just to create more space inside. And my partner is also an IFS practitioner, and it is really helpful for a relationship to be able to relate to each other and our parts at that level, even just to use the language of our parts.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the more we know our systems really well, like Dick, I'm an advocate for the personhood of our parts, meaning, these parts of us are real beings inside of us. We're real. So they're just little pieces, parts of us. When we know exactly who it is that's blending in the moment or needing our attention, just like our little kids, it makes life so much easier. And then when our partners happen to know who they are as well, they could be like, hey, I see that little so-and-so is here, or I know that Henry, my perfectionist part, is here scrubbing away at the dishes, and to be able to acknowledge this with each other is super helpful. And it feels really good. I'm glad that you have that as well.
And also, I appreciate you sharing how you do your daily parts meditation while you're going for a walk. And I think a lot of my clients also struggle with finding the time to do things. And so even just that layering, that you can do that while you're exercising, or just find ways that make it work for you in your schedule.
Yeah. In my workshops, I teach a little bit about that, like what are the different things you need to think about when creating a daily practice. If you're sick, or if you've got in-laws in town, or if you're traveling, how are you going to do that? Or if it's just simply your busy days. I'm a big advocate for, even if it's 2 minutes in the shower.
Yeah.
While you're washing your hair, you can connect with your parts. Or if you're driving somewhere, if it's not busy traffic, of course, you can still check in.
Yeah, one of my favorite times to do it is when I'm in bed, either like those minutes before I really wake up and get out of bed, or when I'm getting in bed and just turn out the lights and before I go to sleep, is just in those quiet moments, checking in and getting present with them.
Yeah, that's great.
And what is your current growing edge?
Well, because it's so important to my system, writing this memoir is, even though it's been on the front and back burner for 10 years, it's like the most pressing thing. So it feels like it's this hurdle that if I can do this and get it done in the way I want to do it, it's great, but there's some little bits of things that need to be tended to in that process. It's way different than writing the DPMP, because it's very emotional, going back and reading through, these blended periods of time and the deep healing. So there's a lot of self-care that goes in with that. But the other kind of growth edge is I'm stepping into psychedelic assisted therapy. Next month, I'll graduate from Naropa's University for Psychedelic Assisted Therapy and the MAPS training. So I'll have those kind of trainings under my belt. I've been beginning to do some ketamine therapy with one client, and because I live in Oregon, psilocybin will be legal next year, and hopefully we'll be able to embark upon offering those services. So new frontiers.
Exciting stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And do you have a goal for when you want to finish your memoir, or is it kind of fluid right now?
Yeah. It's funny as I hear that, because I've put different deadlines on my desire to have a certain date, and that's always come and gone. So I don't. I'm not putting the date on there anymore. It's I realized that I had been kind of doing it in fits and starts, or kind of like sprints, and this is much more like a marathon. So I know where the goal line is, and it's just going to be a process of just letting it happen.
Yeah.
Don't know if I'll finish first, second, or third, so to speak, as far as like other runners doing their
I
marathon
totally get
books,
it.
but
Yeah.
like it's going to just take what it takes. But I've been able to begin again in the last month or two, and that feels good.
Do you have a specific writing practice that you do?
Right now, it's interesting. I ended up taking a memoir course, and I didn't know this when I first started writing, is you can't really put dialogue in there. And so I'm now recrafting the places that had a bunch of dialogue between either me and my therapist, or me and a family member, and just making it all my own. So it's a lot of just rewriting at the current moment. And yeah, I've got 3 different computers that my memoir is on, so I'm trying to find the right one that feels better for my hands. So yeah,
I didn't know that about dialogue in memoir.
I
That's a
didn't
good,
either.
that's because I'm working on a new book right now, and it's not a memoir, but it has some memoir sections of each
Mhm.
chapter, and there's definitely dialogue in there. So I don't know.
Yeah, I learned it can get really tricky that way, because I mean, either you're going to have to ask for permission for this is exactly the way they remember it too.
Right.
And the person who I took the course from said, just remember, this is your memoir. This is the way you remember it. And it's your truth. And it may be different for whoever else was in there. That's why we can't really say this was the things they said, even though we may think that that's exactly what they said. But so, yeah, that was definitely a big, oh my gosh, I have to rewrite 50 pages.
Hmm. And Michelle, how can listeners learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, my website is thelistenerllc.com. So you can go there. If you go there, you can register in my for my email blast that I get, my mailing list. And then on Facebook, you can find me at Daily Parts Meditation. It's IFS Daily Parts Meditation Practice. There's a public group for anybody. If you have the book, you can join the private group. And then I'm on Instagram. I only got on Instagram this year because of the center publicity, and I don't remember my Instagram handle, but I can send you that, and maybe it can be in the notes.
Yeah, I can put that in the show notes.
Yeah, I'm very new to Instagram, still trying to wrestle with how that works, but I've got some presence there. And yeah, if you enlist in my mailing list, then you'll get to know when either workshops or new things are coming out from my work. I should mention that my book came out in Spanish about 2 weeks ago. So if there are any Spanish speakers or people who might benefit from the Spanish version, that's now available as well.
Oh, good to know. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. It's nice to have that ripple going out to more and more people.
Hey, well, it's been a pleasure to have you here today, Michelle, and you're inspiring me just to get even more robust in my daily parts meditation practice.
Wonderful. That's great. Yeah, I can tell that part of you is eager to connect and saw some benefit. So there's others waiting inside too. And I hope our listeners also felt some connection with that too.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to get to know you a little bit, and thanks for the invitation.